So what indications of queerness did you get from the droid character?
Not necessarily from this movie, but I think there lately, at least I can say with Janelle Monáe, she's made a lot of parallels in her work to droids and bots and futurism to queerness and this sort of otherness and revolutionary freedom. Also, specifically her coming out as pansexual, and I realized that Lando's character outside of this movie, in the larger universe of the film, is hinted at being pansexual.
How so?
I don't know. I've never seen it, but
Okay.
I've heard that the filmmakers said that it's hinted at in this film as well, which I didn't see, and I guess the only possibility of that would be with whatever relationship he has with this droid, which is a point of comedy at some points when
Right. There's a not so subtle insinuation that there's a sexual relationship between Donald Glover's character and his droid, which I found really problematic, right? Why is the only black character in the movie, the only main black character in the movie, in a sexual relationship with a machine?
I don't know how I feel about that critique, though, because that's another thing where if that's a hint towards queerness, then it kind of comes off as a hint to like, well, why is this only? I don't know. It hits.
I mean, I didn't read it as queerness at all, though, right? Because the android's supposed to be female, right? And they give you the voice is very stereotypically black female, right?
Like, is it? I never got that.
So.
I never got that.
Really?
Never. All I got was female. And when I said like instantly, I paired it to women's rights. I kind of paired it to white feminism. Really? And then I saw the openness of when she keeps saying equal rights, that could be applied to so many things. I never interpreted her as a black woman, though.
Well, whenever you talk about a servile class who's fighting for freedom and trying to get out of slavery, I immediately go to black folks, right? Because
we're black.
Yeah.
Every oppressed community goes to themselves.
Does every oppressed community on the planet have the same experience with slavery, with global slavery?
But think about in feminism how white women in white feminism at least, see their issues as so huge without considering everyone else's. I mean, whenever you don't know someone else's story, of course it's easy to seem like whatever you're going through or doing is like the biggest deal in the world, because it's the biggest deal to you.
I agree. That being said, you got a bigger deal than African slavery.
I mean, with the droids though,
they're a population that's dehumanized, and the people who hold them in captivity think of them as non-sanctioned, as not having the same capacity as the people who own and control them.
And I see how you liken that to slavery, but also there's just a larger, more vague, because I saw it as very vague, arc of oppression. And it looks like, to me it seemed like something loosely held of, these droids represent an oppressed people, fill in the blank with whatever is convenient to you. I don't know if that's a good thing, I don't know if it's a lazy thing or an open-ended bigger statement, but that's...
I think ambiguity serves the filmmakers, right? Because then you can insert yourself. No matter who you are and what your struggle is, you can read your struggle into the struggle of the characters. I think the ambiguity serves the filmmakers. I think that the notion that this character is somehow subhuman, you're supposed to read that, but they not so neatly dispose of the character. I don't know what I thought about that arc and what we're supposed to take away from that, right? Oh, you started a revolution, but not really, and you're going to end up dead. And I don't know how much better that is than killing off black characters in movies, right? Or this notion, I keep seeing this trope realized in films where black characters, even when they're the stars, somehow start off or end up in prison. I'm thinking like Flight with Denzel Washington, where he's a amazing airplane pilot and he's troubled, but his arc of redemption at the end of the film involves him going to jail. And so it brings in this question. I just recently watched the new Star Trek franchise headed by an African-American woman, and her entire arc is, she's a brilliant scientist, and first officer on this ship until she makes a mistake and now she's in jail. And it's do filmmakers have the same problem as everybody else in society? They can only see black people in the frameworks in which they've been presented up to this point in popular media. They're a prisoner, or they're a felon, or they're a criminal, or they're dangerous.
But are they reworking the frame through which they show imprisonment or all those things? I guess I don't want to say that I'm more forgiving, but I'm more open to rounded circumstances. I don't expect for the black characters to be picture perfect. Mm-hmm. For the sake of it being a movie, they're going to go through through some sort of conflict,
right?
Because they have to for the drama of it. Otherwise,
do those conflicts always have to involve prison?
I mean, for me, they don't.
Right.
I think most of the films that I've seen with black characters, that hasn't been a huge role.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess with the droids being in prison and everything, I didn't really liken those two things because there was more representation on screen of actual brown people.
Mm-hmm. And so your thought about the droids having a relationship to the LGBTQ community?
To the LGBT community, but also just a rather open one. Because I think the queerness really more so played in with a specific relationship, but all the droids in general, do I see them
for
as
there
like
to be a queerness issue, though, wouldn't the droid have to be represented as male? Because Donald Glover's character represents as male.
No, because then that kind of plays into a binary. Yeah. Of how we interpret gender and all those things. That becomes a much bigger rainbow. So, I mean, I guess that's when the filmmakers say we hinted at Lando being pansexual, what else could they mean?
Yeah, and I guess I didn't read anything about that. And traditionally, Billy D. Williams' characterization of Lando Calrissian was that he was a ladies' man, right? In the original films, he's kind of competing with Harrison Ford's Han Solo for the affections of Princess Leia. And in this film, they kind of reprise that, right? Because there's some insinuation that maybe he's had a sexual relationship with the girl who Han Solo is interested in this movie.
Kira.
Right. And so what I got was that they were playing in a ladies' man vibe. Because there's no notion that he's in a sexual relationship with Han Solo, or has had one, or any of the other male characters, I don't know where pansexualism... Well, doesn't pansexualism imply that you're open to sexual relationships outside of
gender,
just homosexuality or heterosexuality? That either of those things, like a more broad acceptance of what you might have thought of as just bisexuality.
Yeah, well, of course, it's completely broad, but it's broad beyond sexuality. It's also broad concerning gender identity. And so it goes beyond the concepts of this person is male, this person is female, this male person is open to people across genders. You're dealing with a character who is presumably a cis male,
right?
Who was hinted at this.
Donald Glover is a cis male,
right? Who's hinting at this sort of love interest with this droid who is assumed to be female, but is also a droid, and so that completely messes with our concepts of what gender is.
I don't know. I think we might be giving the makers of Star Wars too much.
No, I don't see.
I
don't agree when people say that, because they take all of this stuff into account. Even the worst movies, they take these things, these thematic considerations into account.
I wonder if it matters that Lucasfilm is now headed by a woman. A lot of the blame for the box office, the lack of box office success on Solo, has been heaped onto the shoulders of Kathleen Kennedy, I think her name is. But she's been the head of Lucasfilm, I believe, since Disney acquired Lucasfilm. Mm-hmm. And folks are saying, oh, well, this is a result of her kind of forcing her vision on the Star Wars, and it's not in keeping with what the fans want, and yada, yada, yada.
I don't know what the fans want and for the box office numbers to go down, but I thought this was so much better than the other stuff that I've seen.
The other stuff you've seen being Last Jedi and Rogue One? Mm-hmm. And you thought this was a better movie than Rogue One?
Rogue One, I fell asleep on. And then I woke up and I said, wow, it's still happening. And then it continued to happen for a very long time after I woke up, too.
But the Star Wars movies have gotten longer and longer since they started remaking them. And arguably, they were already, like, even going back to the 80s, they were on the longish side for movies that came out then. But I guess I'm curious whether or not Kathleen Kennedy, are we giving credit to this kind of open view of sexuality, to the fact that a woman is now running Lucasfilm?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. For me, the story was clear. It was concise for a person who hasn't been deeply invested into this universe. It was easy for me to watch and consume.
And that's interesting because of all the films, definitely of the two standalone films, this is the movie that is the most based on you being familiar with old characters. It's just a prequel, like it's an origin story for a character that appeared first in the 1970s.
Right, but for me, it's just a story about this character without any attachment to previous actors or how it relates to another world. I think she did a good job with this. This is the main focus, not this is how it pertains to this larger universe, but like we're focusing on this story right now.
But then I would imagine the end of the movie was a loss for you when the girl meets her boss.
The end of the movie, to me,
the hologram who appears.
To me.
Yeah. Spoiler alert: at the end of the film, Darth Maul makes an appearance, who's the villain from the first of the prequel films that came out in 1999, and he looks to have died in that movie. Right? He's literally cut in half.
Yeah.
But he appears in this movie with robotic legs. And there's some stuff in...
So it didn't throw me off. It just
really?
read as though, okay, this story is to be continued. And if it weren't a part of this larger universe, then maybe it would allow for a sequel, but the sequel already exists because this is a sort of prequel of sorts.
Right.
So it didn't throw me off.
So you would recommend Solo to...
I would recommend it over that other stuff. Yeah, I thought it was...
Over that other stuff being
Rogue
One or Last Jedi.
Last Jedi.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say see it if you will. If you miss Solo and you're already familiar with the characters in Star Wars, you're not missing anything. A lot of the critique of Solo has been, this is an origin story you didn't really need. Like you knew everything you needed to know about Han Solo and Lando Calrissian from what you've seen in the original Star Wars franchise. So it's not pressing that you see it. And none of the acting or the narrative arc, for everything except the reveal of Infant Sness at the end as the kind of progenitor of the rebellion. Everything else in the movie I thought, you could do that or you could not do that. And there's no loss in seeing Solo, but I can't wholeheartedly recommend it either.
All right.
Okay. So let's move on to our other film this week.